Do you like The Matrix? Well, we all know why it's groundbreaking. Sex appeal.
Red pill, blue pill, Morpheus, Warrises. Seashells by the seashore, Orpheus.
That's hot. I really like that. And let me tell you something. Something about The Matrix people don't often talk about is its sound design. For which it won awards.
Dane Davis for TheMatrix.
But, sadly, no one really talks about that. It always gets overlooked. So I'm going to be looking at 3 key areas of sound, and why The Matrix's auditory world is one that is astounding. I'm looking at theme, I'm looking at clarity, I'm looking at genre. Now, you've come to the right guy here. I love how larger-than-life genre filmmaking can be. And it's no secret that The Matrix is heavily influenced by genre filmmaking, one in particular being Hong Kong action. Now look no further than John Woo's 1992 classic Hard Boiled. You know the sound effects I'm talking about from that film. I'm talking about the...
Empty. So are you.
The sheer amount of gun fu in The Matrix is orgasmic to the ears. But the biggest achievement in this film's gun fu sound design comes from the incredibly cool utilization of sound in slow motion. So a gunshot is no longer a quick, loud bang. In the expansion of time, the gunshot has been transformed. We can hear the mechanics of the gun unfolding. Normally, a bullet zips through the air with the sound of a high-pitched whip. But in slow motion, we can hear the bullet ripping apart the oxygen with the noise of a jet engine. This sound design really sells you on the incredible force a bullet is exerting and the impact it can have. If you're like me and you love the sound of firearms in movies, then this motion picture is that gungasm to the ears. It's pretty good, but another genre the Wachowskis took huge inspiration from was that of martial arts cinema. Films like Gordon Chan's 1994 Fist of Legend is one of the Wachowskis' go-to kung fu classics. Legendary filmmaker and fight choreographer Yuen Woo-ping, who was the fight choreographer on Fist of Legend, was convinced by the Wachowskis to work on The Matrix, giving it that authentic kung fu action style. But what does kung fu sound like? I think Yuen Woo-ping got it right with his 1978 action comedy, Drunken Master. To me, it is the perfect example of this genre's sound design tropes. Punches crack, the swings whoosh, and Jackie Chan's a little bit of a goof. The sound of kung fu action is so synonymous with audiences that everyone knows what to expect when they hear a punch. So that should just be an easy job for The Matrix's sound design team, right? Kinda like copy and pasting pre-made sound effects. Wrong! For The Matrix, sound designer and supervising sound editor Dane Davis didn't want to reuse pre-existing sound effects, even from the genres they were inspired by. In an interview, Davis said, basically, we wanted to create all of the sounds of the movie from scratch in order to give it a very unique quality. Now, that is dedication to the craft. Not only did they make their own versions, they actually made a unique change to how those effects sound. In traditional martial arts films, the swings are lower in pitch, and the connecting punches are higher in pitch. It's a powerful cracking sound, normally achieved by recording a wooden block hitting stone, which conveys an unrealistic sense of power. But for The Matrix, this seems to be reversed. A swing through the air is a high-pitched whip, giving it a much quicker sense of speed, but the punches that land are lower in pitch, sounding meatier and heavier with this big, bassy percussiveness. So it does give the same effect of an unrealistic sense of power that traditional martial arts films have. But the genius of Dane Davis's redesigned kung fu effects is that it grounds the outlandishness of its sound with, ironically, a little more realism. Punches sound like wet meat being slapped against a wall. It sounds painful. And this gives the audience the impression that these characters are moving with superhuman speed and strength, but there's also a very real danger to being punched. And remember, in the film, the characters are in a simulation where the rules of reality can be bent or broken, so the sound design is working to represent that idea, but at the same time, for the drama of this film to work, the audience needs to stay grounded enough so that actions feel like they have consequences.
Trying to always have that very earthy, very brutal, very musical quality that those Hong Kong films had, you know, but I also wanted to give it a kind of definition and articulation that they never had time to really put into it.
I think it's the perfect marriage of escapist sound and realistic sound. A subtle and unique take on the genre tropes of kung fu sound design. Next up is clarity. We instantly know as an audience when an action scene has a poor sense of clarity. In terms of visuals, connecting punches lack weight or are entirely obscured, the simple act of jumping over a fence is made into something quite ridiculous. Retaining clarity is, I think, the challenge of any big scene. There's no better example of this than the lobby scene. Originally, every action, every bullet, every explosion, every possible detail had a sound effect in the mix, and the team knew that this scene was really too big for too long and it could become annoying. But the Wachowskis were more interested in peaks and valleys, and this is how they retained clarity in such a loud scene. What do they mean by peaks and valleys? Well, when the audio is at its loudest, it peaks. And to signify when it's quieter and calmer, a valley. You don't want a scene to be constantly loud. If everything is constantly loud and there are no valleys, you do run the risk of annoying the audience. You also take away from the intensity that sound can give an important action. Take for example, this awesome little bit of action when Trinity kicks this soldier's shotgun and smokes the fool. The sound dips into an auditory valley, and for a brief moment, we have quiet in the sound mix. Logically, everything should just be gunfire. It should be a din of annoying noise, because these four have been established to be shooting their guns. But this small moment of quiet builds up anticipation. We know, and he knows, he's done gone goofed. So having the sound dip into that valley helps to build to a peak, giving more satisfaction to the action on screen. It's like a miniaturized version of a Western shootout. The quiet build-up is what makes the payoff feel more explosive. Dane Davis used what he called a poetic approach. This approach was so effective that it impressed Joel Silver. The producer, Joel Silver, is known for liking things louder, and he loved the poetic approach so much that even he said, "Hey, go more abstract." For those of you who don't know who Joel Silver is and why one would say he likes things louder, here's a selection of his films. Going more abstract is what gives this scene such a unique sound quality, because not only do the peaks pay off with their explosiveness, but the valleys themselves have such cool and interesting sound effects within them, like slow motion gunfire, shells bouncing off marble, and even the sound of reversed gunfire. The valleys aren't just being used as a tool to build to the peaks of action, they're just as interesting on their own. This is one of the top standards of action sound done right. Finally, let's talk about thematic sound design. What I mean by thematic sound design are any elements of sound that work to tell a story and explore the themes without being directly related to what is being portrayed on screen. It's not a literal sound, it's what I'll call a conceptual sound. And what do I mean by a conceptual sound? Well, it's very much like the sound of gunfire being reversed. It doesn't play in a literal way, because the footage isn't being reversed, nothing is going backwards in time. The sound of gunfire being reversed has a unique sonic quality, it sounds cool. It adds variance to the soundscape and suits being played against the music in that scene. To quote Dane Davis again for the 100 millionth time, it made the beat more intense and punchy, even though it had no literal meaning. So that's what I'd call a conceptual sound, one without a literal meaning, and a thematic version of a conceptual sound is one that goes beyond being just about the aesthetics of a scene. They have to mean something within the story. And my favourite example of this type of sound design comes from the oh god, a mirror is eating me scene. So far in the story, Neo doesn't know he's inside of the Matrix, or even what the Matrix is, and neither does the audience.
Do you want to know what it is?
There are many hints throughout the film, and within this scene especially, the dialogue is telling you details around the idea that they are in a digital simulation.
The pill you took is part of a trace program. It's designed to disrupt your input-output carrier signal so we can pinpoint your location.
But the craft within this film is so superb that you're not only hinted at through exposition, you are shown through visuals, and then you're giving a poetic understanding of what's going on.
Have you ever had a dream, Neo, that you were so sure was real?
What if you were unable to wake from that dream? How would you know the difference between the dream world and the real world?
And we're slowly realizing that Neo's reality inside of the dream world is falling apart. And then now, let me just reverse this a little bit. That's my reverse noise. Now, a lesser sound design team may have been satisfied with just having Neo scream, for it to be played in a literal way without any unusual computery sound effects. But the addition of the scream being digitized gives the impression that Neo, in some way, is digital. His scream is being processed through a computer, and not only that, but because Neo is being disconnected from the Matrix, it makes sense that we would hear that digitized quality deteriorating as Neo is pulled from the program. Normally, visuals and sound are in a constant marriage, but the sound design of this moment goes beyond that, giving something more. It conveys the story in its own right through conceptual sound effects. There isn't a small computer throwing out dial-up tones in Neo's throat. That would be the literal take on why we just heard that sound. It's a thematic, conceptual sound. It's one of the first real hints that Neo's reality is a digital one.
Let me out! Let me out! I want out!
It's so incredibly common for the audience to be told the story of a film through its dialogue, and it's exciting when the story and themes are shown to us purely visually. But it is a rare treat indeed when the sound alone is able to convey an element of a movie's meaning. It's the cherry on top of 3 expertly considered areas of sound design: genre, clarity, and theme. You know, my tiny little brain boggles whenever I think about the amount of incredible work that was achieved across every department on this motion picture. But as I said in my opening, I believe the sound design to be the silent partner in our admiration of The Matrix, which is an incredible shame, because the sheer brilliance of what this team accomplished is truly an astounding feat. One that should be analysed by filmmakers, treasured by cinema lovers, and paid close attention to the next time you're enjoying this modern masterpiece. Thank you for watching my video. I thoroughly enjoyed making this one, and I hope you are entertained by my nostalgic nonsense. I'd love it if you were to subscribe and share this video around wherever you can. It would mean a lot to me if you were able to do that, and it would mean a lot if I get to entertain you in the future. So, thank you. Alright, bye y'all!